Hi everyone, it's Carlin here at May Blossom Design, and just like the title of this video says, it's Christmas around here. I signed up for a market that's in November. I'm pretty excited, a little bit overwhelmed because I don't sell a whole bunch. I just like to make what I make. But anyway, I signed up for it and we'll see how that goes. But which means I do have to think about some Christmas stuff. So I made these trees yesterday and I thought this would be a great little fun how to make Christmas tree video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make them, and yeah, so you guys can make yours at home. This is a project that you can definitely use with air dry clay. So if you don't have a kiln or you don't have pottery clay at home, but you have air dry clay, this is definitely a project that can be done with air dry clay as well. So keep that in mind if it's something you want to try. But yeah, let's get started and I'll let you know what we need. Okay, so the first thing that you will need to do, and if you have like a kids play pylon or something like that in the cone shape, that would definitely work. These are what I have made for myself. So I made a large one, medium size, small, and then smallest. Now, all I did for that, because I don't have a pylon, so all I did was I took a piece of cardstock and started rolling it into a cone, just kind of finessing it. Now, you can adjust this however you want, however big you want the base or the top or whatever. Then I just have painter's tape. You can use any kind of tape you want, but I just have painter's tape at the moment. Once you get the shape that you're looking for, you just tape that. I tape it in a couple different spots, I just tape it in a couple different spots to keep it nice and tight. So there we go. So now the bottom kind of looks funny. Then you're going to need scissors. So then I just take my scissors, and this is the flat part. So I wanted this as tall as I could possibly get it. So then I just went around in a circle, going as straight as I could. Obviously not perfect. So then I just kept finessing it until it sits straight. So it's not straight. So then, yeah, just finesse it until it sits straight, or until you're happy with it. There we go. So that's how I made all my forms. That's what you're going to form your whole tree around. So you can definitely make this multiple different sizes. This is exactly how I made each and every one. The only difference is when I made this one, I just cut it this far up. So I just adjusted the size just by cutting different lengths of them. So that's that. The next thing that you're going to need will be, sorry, let me get that out of the way. You will need some newspaper or some flyers of some kind. Something that has, like, white paper would probably work too, like printer paper, anything like that. But what you want to do with that, or what you want to do with this, is so that you don't have to make new forms each and every time you make a tree. Because for me, I'm going to be making 3 or 4 different sets of these trees. So I don't want to make 3 or 4 different cones every time. And let's be honest, we always have flyers in the mail. We always have newspaper or something like that hanging around. So just like the cone, all you want to do is wrap up the newspaper, and you'll see why this is important later. Then same like when you made your form. Just tape it up. And again, this I do in a couple different spots because those are obviously going to be your weakest points, especially with the moisture from the clay. So just keep that in mind also. And I'm going to do right at the top too. Okay, and then just like before, cut off any excess, just find the bottom or rip it. And this part doesn't have to be perfect if it's not all the, if you cut it shorter than your cone, it's no big deal. Because this is just, like I said, you'll see, by the end of the video, you'll see why this step is important. Unless you want to make new cones every time, but again, you'll see why this is important when we get to that part. So yeah, there we go. It's straight, and you'll want to do that for every size of cone that we use. So if you want to make 3 of these, you want to make 4, you want to make however many, you'll need one for every cone. So then next, what you'll need is if you have a slab roller, obviously use a slab roller because that will make this process so much easier. Well, not so much easier. It'll just be one less thing you have to do. But yes, so I am going to be using 3mm thick rolling guides. So I have these rolling guides. You're obviously going to need a rolling pin of some kind. I made the trees that I showed you at the beginning, they were with 5mm thickness, and it was just a bit too much. They got to be a bit too heavy. So I'm going to do these ones in 3mm and see how that works out. I think it might work a little bit better. You're obviously going to need a sponge. You're going to need some slip. And I like to have like a needle tool for cutting. I like to have some wooden tools just sometimes for blending your edges. You're going to need a paintbrush, obviously, to do your slip. You're going to need some water for said slip and paintbrush and all that kind of stuff. And then for the fun stuff, if you decide that you want to put texture or anything on your clay, you'll need something like that. But you can also use little rolling pins, which I do have. These ones have like little trees on them. Maybe I should try that. We'll see. But yeah, you can use anything you want to make texture, or you can leave them with no texture. I am going to be adding a little bit of texture, but I'm also going to be doing a few different things on this tree. So yeah, I'll just talk you through that when we're making it. So yeah, otherwise, I think that's it. I'm going to roll my slab out. I'm not going to make you watch that because it's slow. So you just need to roll your slab out, and then I'll show you how we're going to cut it, and we'll bring you back as soon as my slab's rolled. So I have compressed my piece. I've rolled it out. It's a little bit thicker than 3mm, but yeah, it'll work. And this is also reclaim. It's Plainsman 340S, but it is reclaim. So if you can see these little stripes and stuff in here, but it will work perfect for this project. And again, like I said earlier, you definitely can use air dry clay for this as well. It will totally work. So what I like to do, this one I'm going to make a little bit different than these other ones. They're going to be just a touch different. So all I'm going to do, I also like to use these measuring guides for, I use them for lots of different things. So like for my handles, they space out my handles and they do all that. Just like this, I like to use them as a measuring guide for cutting. So when I just cut my strips, these are, I'm going to say these are close to 2 inches, maybe 1 inch and like 3/4 maybe. But you don't have to make them perfect either. And I am going to make a couple that are maybe a little bit smaller, just as something different. Let me make one that's just small. Actually, let's do 2. So then these pieces will be used for something else. So I'm just going to quickly do like a squish wedge, like the Play-Doh wedge, I could call it, squishing it like you would Play-Doh. Then I'm just going to wrap it back up until we need it. Now, another thing with this project is you don't want to wait. Well, you could wait till they're leather hard, but I wouldn't. I would do it right now because you are bending these pieces, you're meshing them together, and you want them to bend nicely. If you wait till they're leather hard and you go to bend it, you're gonna get cracks. You don't want cracks. So what I'm gonna do first, we're gonna do the smaller trees first so that this video isn't so long. Like I said, you can use kind of whatever you want for texturizing your pieces. And for this one, I'm just going to use the end of a dowel. So all I'm going to do is just take my dowel and push it in. I do a pretty good push so I get some clear like definition, but that's all I'm doing. Now, like I said, you can also use a rolling pin. You can use like a textured rolling pin. You could use a tool that has texture. Yeah, you can use pretty much whatever you want. Or like I said, also, if you don't want to put texture, don't put texture. So then I just take it, and you will have to finesse a little bit. But this is the reason why you want soft clay and not super hard clay. And you're just going to cut it off. Don't discard that piece because you will need it again. So then I also forgot to mention you're going to need something for scoring. Not that because you're using such soft clay, it's not, yeah, you should always just slip and score. I was going to say it's not that important, but it still is important. So then you just score both edges. Slowly just start to like finesse them together because you also have to push up here as well, like up in this area to make the cone part of it. So then once you get them together, make sure that they connect well. And because you use that texture, what I like to do is when I try to make a seam, I try my best to make a seam where it's not as noticeable. So like once I clean this up, you're not going to notice that there's a seam in here because I had my indent here and my indent here and the seam's here, but it looks seamless. So then all I do, I just take my sponge. You'll do a final cleanup at the end, but especially where the seam is, I just like to make sure that it's good and connected. And like, see there. I don't know if you can see that little crack. This is the only thing, and another reason why it's good to use really soft clay, because this project you can't see the inside until you're done. So you can't fix those cracks on the inside until you're done. So you just want to make sure that those cracks have enough moisture to hold out for the whole entire time that you're building the piece. Because that's what'll totally ruin your piece is the cracks. Okay, there we go. So then again, another reason why you want to use soft clay, all these little cracks. So I just go in and make sure you do have to work fairly quickly And because you're working on a cone, you can pull down and you're not going to pull it right off the piece, which is also nice. But yeah, just make sure you take care of all these little cracks or stress cracks right at the time of, because it makes things a lot easier. And maybe keep a little towel handy. But yeah, then I just make sure that around the top, like where I'm going to connect my next piece, is coned upwards, like in the cone. Okay, so I think the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to do like the little experiment thing that I want to try. So I want to try putting some coils on here. So I'm just going to set that to the side for a second. So I just have 2 coils rolled out. They're not very thick, but all I want to do is, instead of doing something just like pieces, I'm going to do little horseshoes kind of. So I'm just going to create little things like that just by folding it in half. And then we're going to add it like that. So I'm just going to make all these first, so they're all the same size. So then I just want to put a little bit of a score here. And again, this is soft clay, so it'll look like a little messy, but it definitely is going to work better for you with softer clay, and you'll have a better chance of less cracks with softer clay. So then I'm just going to take the bottom of each of these and score them. Obviously pick the side that looks a little bit nicer. Just take your slip. I like to put it on this bottom piece because then I know that I'm catching the bottom piece with slip, if that makes sense. And I go heavy with the slip. I've mentioned that before on anything that I've hand built. I'm a heavy slipper. So then right where you scored it, you're just going to push it. I like to push it right up because then you're going to cover almost all of that. And I don't want to make it super even. Oh, see, look at that. I have a crack because I keep touching it. We'll come back and we'll fix this in a minute. Okay, well, let me roll out one more and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've put the last one on. Doesn't look perfect, but that wasn't the purpose. So then I'm just going to go and I'm just going to give it a good press, make sure that all of these are attached at the top. Then I'm going to go, and because that's the shortest one, I'm just going to go and cut all these excess tops off because you don't need all of this excess. Because it just adds weight and bulk, and yeah, you don't need that. Okay, so then what I like to do is get your paintbrush. So as you can see the slip there. Go underneath and make sure that there's slip pressed all up underneath all of these joints. We're going to come back and fix that. Wherever these pieces touch, just make sure you go and make sure that there's slip pressed up underneath it. So I think what we're going to have to do, I think we're going to have to add some in here because I don't think it wants to stay nice. So as you can see, I just added some slip. I just scored it, added some slip, and we should be good to go. We will fix on the inside when we take the form apart. So yeah, then I go with some water on my brush, and you can see all these little cracks underneath here. I go and touch all those up. Then I also like to go in right after I've done all that. Like I said, I'm heavy on the slip. I don't want it to crack. I don't want them to separate. So I'm heavy on the slip. So I add more slip than I probably need to, but all it takes to make that look nice is just a little bit of sponge work or brush work or whatever you want to call it. But to me, it's just extra insurance that everything's going to stick and mesh well together. Plus, it also helps if you have some little cracks from bending your clay. Okay, so that is that. Put your little cuttings there. So the next one I'm going to do, I think it's just going to be a small one too. It's going to be a small one. So this one, I got these tools. I can't remember where I got these tools, but it has like a little groovy thing on it. So all I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to pull it. And yeah, make some texture. Then I'm going to flip it over, and because you want the bottom is what touches. That's what I'm going to score. And then same with here. I just want to score the tops of these. This might be a little bit harder to score just because these top things aren't really attached to anything. Well, they are, but they're not like solid. So then again, your slip. And like I said before, because you're working with softer clay, you don't have to use as much slip. But yeah, I like using a lot of slip. So then same thing as before, you're going to take your piece and you're just going to kind of measure it. Now it gets a little bit trickier. Oops. It gets a little bit trickier the higher that you go, because obviously you're going around and things don't go around as nice as sometimes you would like them. So let's slip, score your edges. This is where some of the finessing kind of comes into play. So like here, this is why, so this is my connection, which I'm going to do that and clean it up. But as you can see, I've got a lot of gaps and I don't necessarily want it down that far on there. So I'm going to try my best to even that out, and then press upwards to try to get it as flat as possible. See? And because these are like textured and abstracty looking, I'm not looking for it to be perfectly even or perfectly, I'm not looking for it to be perfect by any means, but I do want it to look nice. So just take that extra few minutes and try to like finesse it into its place, because sometimes that's all that it needs. So then before I go back in and fix the texture, what I'm going to do is, just like everything else that I've done, I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to make sure that slip is all underneath, that I'm not missing any pieces. And because this piece is the most textured piece, we will be going back in and retexturing it, because you just had your hands all over it. So it's not going to be as textured, obviously. But getting the slip in there to make sure that it has a good connection on top of these is really important. And again, we'll come back and we'll fix them to make them look nicer. But right now, I'm just worried about the slip. So then as soon as we're done there, clean your little tool off or whatever you're using. And then I'm just going to go back in and do the texture again. So there, as you can see, it's got fun texture. And because you made it textured, it's going to have texture on the bottom too, which I like that look. If you don't like that look, you can definitely make it even, but I like that look. So I am leaving it just like that. Then, just like before, I'm going to take just water and I'm going to go and I'm just going to clean up these to make sure they're nice and smooth. Okay, there we go. So I think that looks pretty good so far. So let's keep going. I think I will probably use this piece. Yeah, that's perfect. So again, now here's the tricky part, because I don't need that much extra space. So what I probably will do is, I think I'll do kind of like a little diagonal, and hopefully I can get it to the right spot. Like I said, sometimes you need to do a little bit of finessing, which is kind of annoying, but that's the whole part of hand building. It's just to sit and relax and build something pretty. So then, just like everything else, slip and score. I'm not going to put this slip on just yet, only because I haven't got this part on. So I'm just kind of, and then you'll probably have to adjust at the bottom as well. Yeah, like I said, you will have to do some finessing, but that's all part of the process. So I'm going to take that off, put my slip on. Don't forget to slip and score your other edges. So this one here, we'll have to do some like trimming. So like here, we don't need all this. So all I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna trim a bit off and smooth it out. Like I said right at the beginning, you're definitely gonna have to do some finessing, and this is part of it. But this, because this texture that I used is quite easy to like hide your seams and stuff, it's pretty easy to do, like I said, the finessing. So here we're gonna have to do it again. And just make sure all your seams are good. And then I'm gonna take my sponge and just make sure everything's good and clean, and then I'll show you how I re-add some of this texture. You're not gonna get all of it back, and there isn't really any texture here. It's just kind of like the dimples, but I'll show you how I get at least a little bit of them back. But I'm gonna fix the bottom first. So just like with every layer, I went and made sure, just go and make sure that all your slip is underneath here is good. If you don't think that there's enough, just go and get some more. And like I mentioned this before, because they are hand built, I'm not real set on them looking perfect. I like as much as I like when things are perfect and they come together perfectly, for some reason, this type of stuff I really enjoy when it has the handmade look to it. So I'm not really worried that you might be able to notice that that's where I close the seam, or that it's not 100% perfect. Yeah, which does surprise me a little bit, but I definitely enjoy the way that these look compared to when they look perfect. Okay, so then before I do getting some more of this texture back, I am going to go back underneath here and just make sure that that texture is good from underneath here, because you do take some of it away when you clear up the slip or push in the slip or whatever you'd like to call that. There. So then all I do to try to get a little bit more of defined texture, because like this bottom has a little bit more of a defined texture, I just put my hand in here and I push down on all my little divots, mostly at the bottom. I don't really care much about the top, but I just want to make sure that I get the bottom, because obviously that's where you're going to see, right? So just make sure you've got some in there. There. So then as you can see, you definitely have more defined texture. And if you need to go back in because you've got cracking or anything like that, Just always take care of that as soon as you see it, because if you don't, yeah, you're just going to be fighting with it the whole time. And you don't want to do that. And cracks at this stage are way easier to deal with than when they're halfway dry. Okay, so I think I may add a little bit more something like that, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Yeah. So I'm going to roll out some more pieces, and then I will be back again because it shakes the camera too much. So I'll be back in 1 minute. Okay, so I rolled out my little pieces. So for this time, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do either straight pieces. I think I'm just going to do straight pieces. So I'm just going to score this. And so I'm just going to cut like 1-inch pieces, I would say. And then I'm going to leave these ends kind of wonky. I think it makes a little bit of character. Oh. And then I will also say I'm not the one who came up with this method. I've seen this method done before, but this is just how I'm doing my tree today. So I thought I would share it with you. So then just like before, score the bottom. Actually, I'm going to score it a little bit higher up. I'm going to put slip a little bit lower down. I think I'm going to make these a little bit lower. Actually, I'm going to do these uneven. And then I'll just cut the tops off like I did on the other ones. Okay, there we go. So I made them all uneven, which I kind of like that. But I am going to, just like the last one, cut the top off. Okay, so there's a little bit better close up. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the top. I think. Maybe I'll just do another piece like that. And yeah, we'll do one more piece like this and then we'll do the top. So we're going to slip and score this just like usual. Oh, and I definitely forgot to check the bottom of this one, but I can do that when I'm all done here. So then just cut your pieces. This is where your finessing definitely comes more into play. Because you're using straight pieces and on a cylindrical piece. So like on all the pieces before, I just kind of finesse it upwards without pushing too hard, because again, you don't want cracks. So, I mean, you're gonna get some, but if you work with it the right way, it shouldn't be that bad. This one I'm going to put a little water on it because I am getting some cracks on the bottom here, but I will use that to my advantage and I will show you how I do that. I'm just going back in here, making sure that everything touches, that there's slip in every crack and crevice. Because again, if you don't, you will get cracks. And because I forgot to do it underneath here, I'm going to go underneath and just make sure that everything's good and attached down in here. Fix up all the rough edges on each of these pieces. So now I'm just going to go back with just water and smooth that out because it's pretty rough right now. So I'm just going to go make sure that these are nice and smooth. Same with underneath. Okay, so now if you can see, there's little cracks here, but because I like when things look handmade, I'm going to kind of enhance them a bit, and we're going to make them look like it is an actual tree. So just go in there and take your needle tool, and I just kind of pull up a little bit just to kind of define them a bit, I guess you could say. There. And then all I'm going to do is just take just water, and then I'm going to go in behind it, and I'm going to make sure that I get water all up in there. And then we're going to go back and we're going to give the texture back to it, because again, you're going to lose some of that texture. So yeah, then just take your texture tool. Especially where the seam was. You may lose some of these little pieces, but for the most part, it should be fine. And even if you want down in the bottom, you probably would find some of those little cracks, but if you don't want to put them in there, it's totally up to you. So then the last thing we'll do is we'll just put the top on. So the top I do just a touch different. The top I'm going to do with the dowel texture. So I'm just going to quickly do that. So I'm just going to cut this piece. And you probably should be covering these extra pieces because, like I said, with the cracks and all that stuff, but I'm going to finish the small one right shortly, which will be done right after this. So I think I should be fine. This last piece is a little bit trickier only because of like how much extra you end up having. So, okay, that'll be good. Okay. So same as always, just make sure you have good connection down here. Actually, no, I'm gonna add one more piece onto the top of this, I think. I am. It'll just be a small one. So add your pieces, do your finessing, make sure your cracks are, see, that's why I struggle with doing a tutorial, because especially when I'm building, I kind of just squirrel and I do different things. So I had this idea in my head and then I totally changed it up multiple times so far. But yeah, anyway. So just make sure your seam is good. Just like everything else, just make sure you're pushing up and in and try to fill your cracks. And then again, we'll do with our dowel. So we come in here and we get the texture again at the bottom. So this makes it a little bit trickier. You do have to grab some of this other stuff eventually when you get too far at the top, but just have a light-handed touch and it'll be perfectly fine because it is still quite soft. But you need to make sure that there is a good amount of slip. So before I do the dowel, I'm just going to go in here, make sure that my texture's good again. There's a lot of going over things a few times, but it depends on the kind of texture you have. Like, yeah, if I didn't have these little stripy things, I wouldn't have to do this. But that's what I chose, so that's what I get. Okay, so my last one, I am going to, I'm going to do the stripes. I'm going to do that right on the top as the top. So I'm just going to take my little stripey tool and I'm going to do it on a large piece. I'm going to do the whole piece because why not? And you may find, depending on the size of strips that you use, you may use way more pieces than me, or you may use less because you used bigger pieces. But however you do it, it will still look beautiful. So for the top piece, I'm going to kind of do like a triangle, I guess, just because you're making a top. Oh shoot, I didn't make it big enough. Okay, well I didn't make that one big enough, so we'll try it again. We'll try it this big. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create the top before I put it on. So I'm going to slip and score it. And then I did add texture. You probably don't have to, but I just use my finger kind of as a guide. And I just create the top of the tree, like the tip, I guess. And then this obviously needs to come off because it's not even. And then in here, you can obviously mesh these insides together. And then I think I made it just a touch too small, so I'm just going to flare it out a bit. And there we go. Yeah, So then we're going to slip and score. And then just quickly score your inside. Just make sure everything's straight. And then again, you're gonna have to pick it up to check your slip on the inside. So just be gentle. And then, yeah, just do your slip. And then we'll add the texture in shortly. If you can hear my dog barking, he's got a chronic problem of like barkitis. He never stops. As handsome as he is, that's his biggest flaw. So now I am going to add my texture in, and then I'm going to fix it. So I don't know if you can see it very well, but I'm just going to use my tool and I'm just going to pull down like I have for all pieces. And I think the funnest part about this is even though you put it on here and because it's so soft, like your edges just aren't even. And I think that's what gives it its like whimsy. I'm not sure. I like it when they don't look even. And maybe I'll regret that when I fire it, but I don't think I will. So I'm just making sure that the top has a little bit of texture too, to keep everything looking uniform. Okay. So then I'm just going to take my water. I'm going to make sure that if there are any cracks, just like before that we had like purposely made, these ones have kind of made them on their own. So just go in there and just make sure that everything is well hydrated before you finish and before you cover it. Because if you don't, you can't really go back. Okay, so just do your like final like look through, make sure everything you like is good, because after this part, you can also put your hands inside the cone, and sometimes that'll help you with your finger marks and stuff. I know I've got some on here. I'm just going to clean those up. But be careful when you put your hand in there because you will create cracks on the bottom. So just keep that in mind. It's a cracky project. It's very finicky, but the end result is super cute. So there is our tree. Let me pick this up so you can get a better look. There is our tree. I think it's super cute. So what I'm going to do now, because I did this yesterday, I know that this will work. So what I'm going to do after I fix this little mix up here that I obviously missed. Okay, so there's our tree. So now what you want to do, you just want to hold it gently and you want to pop out your cone, which again, this is why I said you should use newspaper or flyer or whatever on the inside, because then your cone doesn't get moisture on it. And this just pops right out. You can go on the bottom and make sure that everything is nice and smooth. I like to go in with some slip on the very first connection and make sure that everything is good and filled with slip, because that is your most important connection, is the very bottom one, because everything else is stacked on top of this one. So you want to make sure that this one is very well connected. So I go in there with extra slip and just make sure that everything's good. I take a quick peek in there. If you can see where your connections are, go ahead and add a little bit of slip to them too, because it doesn't hurt to have extra. And then I just like to go to the very tip, if you can reach it, and put a little bit in the tip as well, just because, again, that area has pressure on it as well. So then you just smooth your connections. If you have a wooden tool, and just keep in mind the pressure that you're putting on all your pieces with your hand that you're holding it, because you don't want to warp anything. Okay, so there we go. So now what I will do is I'm going to cover this for, oh gosh, I'm going to cover this for probably a week. Yeah, I'm going to cover this for a very long time, because I want it to dry extra slow, because there is so many bits and pieces. Yeah, I want it to dry very slowly. So I'm going to cover this and I'm going to make the rest of them, and I will come back and I will show you what the trio looks like. Hi everybody. So it is the next day. I squirreled and got busy and then did other things and totally forgot to come back and show you what these beautiful pieces look like. I ended up finishing all 3 of this set. It took me quite a while. I want to say like 2.5, 3 hours. It took a while. But that's because it has all these other little pieces in here. So it definitely, yeah, it took me a little while. This set didn't take me as long, but this set definitely took me a while. But I think they turned out beautiful. I think they're great. I'm going to show you a little bit of a few close-up shots, or a little bit closer, so you can see what I'm talking about with all the different details. I think they're going to be beautiful when they're glazed. Yeah, but this definitely, if you don't have a kiln, like I mentioned earlier, you definitely can do this with air dry clay, because it's a very simple project. If you can hear my dogs drinking in the background, I swear I can't I can't catch a break. I've either got kids or dogs or husbands or something. I got people bugging me all the time, but it's fine. Yeah, so you definitely can use air dry clay. It would be a really easy project for your kids, for yourself, for anybody. If you don't have a kiln, it would definitely work for that. Also, it's just a fun project to just do something different, to get your hands in the clay, to work with the clay. It definitely helps you learn how to deal with cracks and things like that, and working with textures. It's a really fun project. But yeah. So I do want to make one final set. I want to make 3 sets, but I can't decide, and this is where I need your help. So if you've listened to me ramble on, I need your help. I want to make one more set. These 2 have glaze plans already. I have going to use Amico's Snow for the speckled clay, because this is Plainsman 340S. This one is Plainsman 340, so no speckle. I'm going to do green tea on this one. But my third one, I know that I want to use lustrous jade. I love lustrous jade. I think it's a beautiful color. But I can't decide if I want to do it on speckled clay or if I want to do it on non-speckled clay. So that is my question for you guys. Would you rather see lustrous jade on speckled clay or non-speckled clay? So let me know in the comments what you would choose. And by the time I glaze these beauties, I will do a kiln opening for all these trees, and we will see what you guys picked. So let me know down in the comments what you think I should pick. And otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. I want to thank you all for watching if you've watched me this far, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.